This one is on embodiment for men. Ugh. All right, so why am I making this video? Well, one of my courses this year has only one man sign up for it, okay? This is a common problem when I work in Eastern Europe. Very few men sign up for courses. You know, this is across business communities, gay communities. If I do a stress management workshop that the business has to sign up for, far less men sign up for it. If I do yoga communities, you know, yoga's definitely more women. It depends on the style, but across the world, dance, definitely more women. Martial arts, a bit more men, but generally I see way more women. And having just had one person and 19 women in a room for my last course, I just went, what the hell? Let's talk about this. Something's going on. Yeah, what's going on with men and the body? Let's look at this kind of historically and maybe what can be done about it. All right, so I don't think it's just me. If anything, I think my style is fairly masculine. I actually seem to get more men than many other teachers. So it seems to be something, you know, talking to other teachers is pretty endemic across the movement and the mindfulness embodiment world. And we might ask why, right? Why? Well, interestingly, traditionally there's been a sort of sexist idea the body is a female domain. Yeah? So from a traditional point of view, the idea is, you know, men is masculine mentality, mind, and woman is body and emotions. And that idea, even though it sounds very old school, is still around in a subtle way, particularly certain cultures. You know, like, for example, England, Germany, a lot of North Europe, men don't dance. That's weird, right? That's a basic human capacity. So there can be cultures of disembodiment. Now, ideas of masculinity can really make this worse, you know, particularly if there are ideas of like, I don't feel, I don't have emotions, you know. James Bond is a classic, I'm in Russia today, James Bond, a classic example. He's super cool, right? And this idea of self-regulation, which is important as an embodied skill, being sort of the only skill that matters, and the idea of feeling or expressing, it's like boys don't cry, yeah? And that's an embodied thing to express one's emotion. Boys aren't even allowed to feel. It's like, stop feeling, shut up, be tough. And I've seen even very sort of liberal parents do this with young boys, this idea that boys aren't really allowed to feel. Moving is somehow like girly or gay or something like that. Saying that, huge disembodiment in the gay community. I live in the gay capital of England. I work with gay community in Moscow. Huge disembodiment there, both for trauma reasons and body beautiful. You know, this idea of the muscular gay, the body beautiful. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that gay community men are just to be inclusive here are immune to this. Far from it, in fact, far from it. Also, men are encouraged to, you know, drinking problems are much higher amongst men. So while, you know, women have it bad in some ways in society, suicide levels are way higher amongst men. Alcoholism, drug addiction, way higher amongst men. And I think one of the reasons for that is encouraging men not to be present with the body, and not to feel, and not to be vulnerable. So this is really the key of it. So this armoring, as we call it in body psychotherapy, this toughness in the body, which is about not feeling, is a defense against actually feeling like, ow, that hurts, or shame. A lot of male violence comes out of shame. You can look at that psychotherapeutically. That inability to be present with difficult emotion in the body is the root of a lot of male violence, both to self and to other. Yeah, and for me, the ability to feel, be present with oneself, to communicate that in different ways, and also to set boundaries. You know, I'm not making a case for being a wimp, far from it. So this, I don't want to call it toxic masculinity because I hate that term, but it's this particular idea of masculinity that says boys, men shouldn't feel. You know, there's an education system which doesn't even suit boys. Boys are doing terribly in education across the Western world, have to sit still all day. You know, that's part of the disembodiment process, and it just doesn't suit the vast majority, I'd say, of children generally, but particularly of boys. There's a reason less boys are going to university now than girls, and across the Western world, and that's that disembodying nature of education. It's a big one. We need to run around and fight and fucking climb trees and hurt each other and get hurt, and that's part of being a boy. Let's be fucking real here. It's not, you know, people say, oh, no. Boys and girls are different. Everyone I know has had children has said that. The evidence certainly suggests that. We're different from a very early age. And part of that, of being a boy, is that visceral nature of wanting to fight and play. And, you know, like, if you give a boy a toy, he'll play with it until either he gets hurt or the toy is broken. I've worked with 50,000 children. I've seen that again and again and again. There's something in boys that needs that. They need to rough and tumble, and it's difficult. I've worked with kids, it's difficult now because you're not really allowed to like play fight with them or anything like that because everyone's paranoid, right? So we need to have that visceral education. So I'm not making a case here that boys are just like in touch with their emotions. I'm making a case that we're allowed to be visceral, and young men are allowed to be visceral. There isn't this touch phobia where men can't touch each other. I love to touch my male friends. I love to hug them. I compliment how they look. Like, we need to, as men, we need to be able to be okay with each other's bodies as young men, right up through, to fathers and all the rest of it. God, a bit passionate there. I believe in this. It's an important thing. Okay. Education that involves movement, martial arts, fantastic for boys. I've been involved in martial arts for many years, teaching discipline, teaching strength, teaching boundaries. Yes, traditionally masculine qualities can be taught through the body. Yeah, absolutely. Masculine qualities are there traditionally. So even if you're like super conservative, this still makes sense. It still makes sense, yeah? So what's to be done about it? Like, what do we do in this world where men feel like they don't come to yoga, they can't come to courses? Well, look at barriers to entry. So I, for example, was in a yoga studio, and they said, why don't any men come to our classes? And I picked up their brochure, and I looked at it, and on the front of the brochure was a skinny 18-year-old girl and a pregnant 35-year-old woman. And I looked at this brochure and I said, where are the men in this brochure? Yeah? So it's like, I'm not a big believer in like representation or positive discrimination, but at least showing the possibility. Also language, like if you're a female yoga teacher, just run it by a male friend, run it by your husband, run it by your son. Say, look at the language I'm using. Was that likely to appeal? Now, it's a generalization. I know some people out there are going to hate this, but men tend to be very purpose-orientated. What's the point? I went to a 3-day dance seminar, and at no point did they say, here's what you'll get, here's the aim. I'm a bloke. I'm like, I want to kill that antelope over there. What antelope are we fucking killing? That's important, right? Like, what's the purpose of the practice? Blokes will do some weird shit if you give them a purpose, all right? It might be about having male teachers, again, without discriminating against people. So I'm a believer you should have the best people in the room, but this is something that can be considered. And this is often strange for women, because in most of society, it's the opposite. And I fully acknowledge this. Most of society, it's women who are discriminated against, it's women who are excluded. For example, I don't know, in technology in the workplace, in leadership positions in the boardroom, yeah? So it's a bit weird for them to think the other way around and go, okay, how might men be excluded here? I was in a yoga class, and the instructions, there was the one man in the class, and the woman was saying, it's roughly where your bra strap is, or move your hand across the breast area, or, it's like when you're menstruating. She kept using all these examples, and I was like, seriously? Have you even noticed me here? I don't mind her using those examples, but at least acknowledge they don't apply to everyone, right? It's, as a male teacher, I certainly do the same when I'm teaching a workshop for a mixed group. The linguistic instructions, some basic consideration, the marketing, there's things that can be done there to get men involved. I think there's a lot of good men's work happening now. There's a lot of men realizing that the body is a key thing, it's a key part of us and something to include. So to all the men out there, get your ass to yoga, get your ass to martial arts, go dancing. It won't destroy your masculinity. We need to get over that. We need to get over this touch phobia that men have with each other. They can be embodied as men in a masculine way, whatever that means to you. And enjoy our bodies once again.